we're going to talk a little bit more about 2XKO. So I really like the idea of a 2v2, and I'm talking players, not characters, versus game. The team dynamic is something that has always kind of had, like, the fighting game has some history with team tournaments and team dynamics, but not really with the games themselves. Very rarely is it enforced by the game. The Street Fighter Cross Tekken had a 2v2 mode, which appeared at 1 Evo, I think. People were kind of, like, it was interesting, but it obviously wasn't the thing that stuck, right? I mean, partly because the game didn't stick, but I don't know necessarily if that's what people were leaning towards. But, it's a different age now, and this is a very different developer with a different history handling it. So what happens when a company like Riot decides to, try their hands at, like, actual team-based fighting games? And it's interesting. And I really like the dynamic. Even playing with a complete stranger, I really like the dynamic of walking up to a station and being like, all right, who you picking? What's a good fuse? None of us really know. Let's go for the basic one, right? Oh, you have a good idea. Cool. That's fine. Like, I'll let you tag in, and then you can do your cool thing and tag me back in, and I'll get the next hit, right? Like, and like that dynamic, and like having that with people right next to you, being like, did you hear that? That means they're going to be tagging in a lot, so we got to watch for that, right? So like, we need something that we can make sure we can tag their assists and pick them off, right? So like, that's super cool and interesting. But it brings up some questions about, how do these tournaments operate, right? And there's a whole discussion to be had about how do grassroots tournaments operate under the umbrella of Riot Games, who has a fairly strict control of their competitive scene in their other games. Those other scenes, those other genres, are more amenable to a top-down structure like Riot has implemented. So that is a whole ass discussion. But just from a functional standpoint, 2XKO allows you to play 2 players versus 1 player, or 2 players versus 2, or 1 versus 1. So the question is, does there need to be a differentiation? If you host a bracket for 2XKO, is it a 1v1 bracket? Is it a 2v2 bracket? Does it matter? I don't think it matters. This is what has me really interested about how this game is going to play out, actually, is how is the community going to react to this format? This is, like, secondhand information. I was talking to someone who was speaking with Proton Cannon at EVO, and they had asked them, what do you envision the competitive scene looking like? And they said first and foremost, that is up to the community, right? What the community wants to run is what's really important, and that is what they are endeavoring to support, which is, it's good, that's a PR line if I've ever heard one, but I also kind of believe it coming from Proton Cannon, right? So like, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're earnest in that, and that they are looking to support the community and what the fighting game community and the competitive community is looking for. Though apparently he followed that up with, I really hope it's open format, where it could be you can enter as a team of 2, or you can enter as a single, and throughout the bracket, because the way the game is set up, it doesn't matter. You can be a single person going through an entire bracket, and you can meet up with another team of 1 or another team of 2, or right, you can enter as a duo and you can face a solo or face another duo, and it doesn't matter. It's not a mode that you're selecting. It is just the way the game is. So I find that really fascinating. And you can, as a team or as players, you then get to decide. It's like, do we want our cooperation where I can reduce my mental load and focus on my character and trust that my partner is going to be able to handle the follow-ups and take some of the mix-up pressure off of my plate, right? That's a really interesting dynamic. Or you're a solo player who it's all internal. You don't have to do any active communication, so you're not giving away any tells working with a partner. And you have it all on your plate. But it means that you get to very explicitly design setups and combos and whatever your strategy might be, knowing that you have control over both your characters. I don't know. I'm kind of stoked. I'm kind of excited to see what would happen if if they allow that. And I'm really hopeful that they do. I agree with Proton Cannon in this, right? Like, yeah, the 2XKO should be open format. Whether you enter as a duo or a solo, it shouldn't matter. I mean, how do you handle entry fee in that case? Is it $10 entry and 5 apiece if you enter as a duo and 10 if you enter as a solo? Is it $5 entry no matter what? So, right, like whether you're duo or solo, you just get to it's interesting, and I'm really curious how people feel about this. So I don't know, anyone in chat, like, what are your thoughts? Do you guys want to play with another player? I mean, like, I'm intrigued in that dynamic, right? I would love to see how does that change how the game plays, right? How does it change? How does the game play differently because you have 2 people on a single team? Right? League was the reason why you don't do team gameplay anymore. And that's the other side of it. The idea of having to rely on other people. I mean, I used to play shooters, and I used to play team shooters. We tried to play competitively, and it did not work, right? And maybe that was just the dynamic of the people playing. Maybe I could have found a team that I worked well on. That reliance, it changes something. But if it's an open format, it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about that, right? Like, someone else being on a team shouldn't necessarily impact your enjoyment of the game. You're able to do that, but the people who are like thrive and really, or like that team dynamic appeals to them, that is now there for them, right? I think it's really interesting, and it opens up to, especially when you consider Riot as a company and what I feel they are going to do for a team dynamic. Like, they have, that is embedded into their DNA in terms of how they operate. So of all teams to do something like this, they are probably best equipped to do it and bring it to the fighting game community, considering who is working on the game. But yeah, Shadow saying, yes, it should be same price for a single or duo. The duo splits the prize. That's the other thing, right? If you're a duo and you win, you don't get a double prize, but you split the prize. It's whatever it is. Great. Yeah, you worked with someone, but you get half as much as if you worked alone. How do fighting gamers TM feel about that? There is the road warrior, the lone warrior with the rucksack slung over their shoulder, that working alone, succeeding alone is I don't know, it's a big part of the mythology of fighting games in some ways. But then again, so are training partners, so are communities. It's the fighting game community, right? Like, there's also this core of recognizing that we only do this with the help of those surrounding us. So I don't know, right? Like, which of those values, because they can coexist as values in individuals and in communities, but which of those values kind of wins out when the team dynamic is presented to you in this way? Yes, thank you. Hayama, absolutely. Strong team play culture in fighting games in Japan. And this is what I was saying, that there is a core of team dynamics embedded in the legacy fighting game community. In the last 10 years, I feel like, especially in North America, that we have lost a lot of the team dynamic, the team tournaments. I remember every major, right, in the 2010s, every major that I was at had a Friday that wasn't the regular brackets, it was the team tournaments. Oftentimes these would be hosted at not the convention center, but it would be hosted at the local, right? You would go to the local card shop or local arcade, and there they would host a team tournament, 3v3, Pokemon style, Waseda style, whatever the case may be, right? And that was always there. That was like foundational for me. It was those Friday night team tournaments were where I made some of my best friends in the fighting game community. They are where I met training partners. They are where I learned the most, because the dynamic meant we had to talk. We had to talk strategy. If we were, what am I good at? What are you good at, right? Those things came out in that dynamic, and that was core to it. But in the last 10 years, we're not really seeing that as much, right? The Friday tournaments disappeared, probably as a cost-saving measure. Like, that shit can get expensive. How much value is it providing? Not necessarily as much as you would hope. So, right, when it comes to, am I going to run the event or am I going to do this extra thing? I'm going to make the event better. I'm going to cut out this little extra Friday night thing. So I think that is something that we have lost in the last little bit, but it's not gone. As Hayama points out, especially in Japan, the Cooperation Cup. There's the team tournament formats. Like that is very much a part of the culture. A lot of the new generation is solo because they're looking for sponsorships and streaming awards, etc., which are very individualistic goals. I mean, I would say only insofar as there is no real team dynamic in the actual play, right? Like, it's not... You could have a fighting game team. We have had fighting game teams in the past. I think the esports bubble is just not sustainable for a lot of reasons, right? But, like, you're right, we don't have the actual... Like, we don't need a 5-person team or a 4-person team to play a Overwatch or Halo or whatever the case may be. So there's less of a need for it, but having several really good Street Fighter players on a single team working together, training with each other, making each other better, there is value in that, right? And that still does exist. And you can get the sponsorships and rewards through those things as well. But you're right, I think the influencer thing, for lack of a better term, right? It's like being the person who does well at a tournament and then turns into the person that people listen to. I mean, that's a viable path to like sustainability and success, right? You've seen it with Sajam and Brian F and, you know, a whole ton of players. A lot of people will, like, you're right, lean towards that a bit. Always wanted to see a 4-man tag game. Yeah, the coordination, the synchronization, I think that's a really fun dynamic. Yeah, and KO, you're right. And this is the thing. There have been attempts. I am sad that 2XKO is beating Cerebral to the punch. Cerebral is an indie 2v2 fighting game that has been worked on for a long time now, and it's gone through recently an engine refresh, which has delayed it. But it means that 2XKO is going to beat it to the punch. But that it's super, and they are doing a lot of very similar things. Way more Cerebral is way more high flying Marvel than like anime launcher the style that 2XKO is. And that is apparently the official terms that I'm now using. But other games have done this as well with, a long time ago, Kazuna Encounter, a fucking 4-player arcade game, right? 2v2 tag fighting game. Oh, Jesus, I need to get that working. And then, yeah, SNK Heroines has a 4-player mode as well. SNK Heroines also has a really interesting win condition, right? Well, a different win condition in that you have to use a particular super to get the KO. But they've tried some different things. And I think maybe one too many things was the problem with that. I'm excited that a team with a history of understanding team dynamics is applying it to fighting games, and then they have brought in people who have a great understanding of fighting games in order to execute on that vision, right? It's like, I'm not a League player, I'm not a Valorant player, I'm not a Riot Games fan, but like, they are being very, very smart with how they have decided to enter this sphere, and everything that I have played of it, gotten my hands on, has been very refined to the point, and in line with what they're saying. I think that is the thing that my real takeaway from my experience with 2XKO at EVO this year was that the play experience does actually line up with the promises that they are making. How that plays out long term obviously remains to be seen, but that is something that it is very clear that they're working on it and they're caring about it and that they're hitting at least some of the marks.